Have you ever wondered what was here before all the buildings and roads? What we know as Birmingham today was nothing but a wilderness in 1812, when the War of 1812 was being fought. After the war ended, this wilderness, Michigan Territory, came back into the hands of the U.S. It had previously been in the hands of England. So now it became U.S. territory. And after the war, a lot of people wanted to come to the new land and settle here. And Birmingham, what we now call Birmingham, was a location that was halfway along the Saginaw Trail to the important town that was just being built of Pontiac. And so that has a lot to do with why Birmingham became the Birmingham that we know. The War of 1812 ended and settlers began to move up the trail. This area was eyed and picked out by John West Hunter, John Hamilton, and Elijah Willits and their families. And they had been soldiers during the War of 1812, and so as a result they got a special deal when they wanted to buy land. But they wanted something very important in the land that they chose, and they all came together with a plan to buy their land all together, the same connecting parcels, so they all controlled the same component, and that area is now downtown Birmingham. The three families came up here to the Birmingham area to buy their land about halfway between Detroit and Pontiac, where people could stop for the night as they came along the trail on their way to the new town. This house, the John West Hunter house, is like an artifact that tells the story of that time period. And just like we might have a jar or a book or an old item that we can, study and look at, we can actually study a house to learn more about how people built things, what materials they used, where the materials even came from. And so when we talk about the John West Hunter house, in a way we're talking about it like a great big artifact. The big deal about being here and why the three of them wanted to locate here is because this was about halfway along the Saginaw Trail between Detroit, which had about 1,000 people living in it at the time, and Pontiac, which was this new town. Now, today, it only takes really a few minutes to get from Detroit to Pontiac, but back then, this was wilderness, and the route was nothing more than a footpath. There were no cars. Sometimes they didn't even use horses. So it was usually 2 days to get from Detroit to Pontiac. And halfway along the trail, ta-da, you come out of the woods and you're in this little segment of the trail where the three settlers have built their cabins halfway to Pontiac, and the sun is now going down. So a very convenient place for you to spend the night and pay a few extra dollars. Well, at that time it was much less than $1, but pay extra to stay the night in a place with shelter over your head. And so many a weary traveler would stop off and stay with either John Hamilton or Elijah Willits or John West Hunter. And that trail was a very important land route that we still have in existence today, only now it's paved. In fact, it's paved really wide, and it is our famous Woodward Avenue. So whenever you run across the name Woodward Avenue, remember that it started off as an Indian path between Detroit and Pontiac and went much further north into Michigan. So from a small Indian trail to wide Woodward Avenue. That's one of the big changes in the last 200 years. So John West Hunter built this house in 1822 with help from a carpenter. It was a really nice house for the time because almost everyone lived in nothing more than a log cabin, and this was an actual framed out house with windows, very nicely done. But this wasn't his first home. He actually first lived in a log cabin. His first log cabin was built as I had mentioned, the 3 parcels of land all came together, and he accidentally built it on John Hamilton's property. So he had to leave. And when he left, he decided to build a fine house. And at the time, this smaller house that we would think of as small on our scale today was a very fine house indeed. And it was built right on the Saginaw Trail, or as I've been saying, Woodward Avenue, what we know today as Woodward Avenue, right in what is now downtown Birmingham. And it stayed there for a really long time, almost 75 years before things changed and it had to be moved again to save it. The Hunter family came to this area from upstate New York, and the story is that the 2 Hunter brothers first came here to scope out the land by arriving on sleigh. Supposedly they came in a sleigh all the way across the big lake, which was frozen solid at that time, Lake Ontario. These bells in the case were kept by the family, and we've always understood that they were bells that related to that first trip. They're the original sleigh bells handed down by John West Hunter, and you can see they're very large. We know that sleigh bells were important because sleighs would get going very fast, and they really didn't have a good braking system, unlike cars these days. And sleigh bells were used as a way to warn people to get out of the way because a very fast-moving sleigh was headed their way, and it helped avoid crashes. John West Hunter, his wife Margaret Prindle Hunter, and their children Harriet, Huldah, Sarah Ann, Amanda, John James, and Mary all lived in this house. Margaret's 2 sisters were also here with her in Birmingham. Olive Prindle married John Hamilton, the same John Hamilton who settled here. He owned land next to the Hunters. And Mariah, who also was called Sarah, married John West's brother Daniel. Wow. That's a lot of close family connections living all in one place. Historians sometimes make telling stories about who was related to who easier by laying them out in what we call a family tree, like this. People who are interested in their family history sometimes still make family trees at home too. Has anyone in your family made one? People back then, 200 years ago, often had very large families because there was a lot of work to do to keep the whole family going. And children had just as many chores as the adults did, which we're going to talk about in other videos. Time went by, and the Hunter house passed on to other families who brought their families here, raised their children, and moved on. After the Civil War, another man from Birmingham named Henry Randall, who had fought in the Civil War and came back to town to want to establish himself in business and build his own family, he eventually acquired this house, and he decided to save it because there were some other people who wanted the land the house was on to build a brand new house, and this little house didn't suit them. But it suited Henry Randall just fine. He really liked this house, in fact. So he had another place in town, a smaller lot that he could move it to. And the house was moved there, picked up, moved over, and put on its new spot. And that was in 1893. And we really appreciate what Henry Randall did because sometimes things are only saved, even ordinary things are only saved because the people who have them really care about them and think they're very important, even if they may not be important to someone else. And thankfully, saving this house as an example of one of the few houses even built this way has been a great treasure for us today, 200 years later. So we're really happy that Henry Randall did his thing. And we still do that now. We still preserve things that we think are important and we value, even though we don't know if in 200 years someone else will. So maybe you know something that you would like to save for a long time, just in case someone in the future would want to know about it. Over time, even in a quaint house like this one that's very well loved by someone like Henry Randall, still needs to be updated and improved. Things change, technology changes. In the case of this house, in the 1920s, there were some brand new technologies, electricity being one, that became important. And so other things, the way that people lived changed a little bit, the way they heated changed. And so this house experienced a couple changes. One of them was that the room between the dining room and the parlor was wide, the opening was widened to make it a lot more, kind of a bigger and more comfortable room for families to use. And as I said, electricity was brought in. And at the time that those renovations were done, the person who owned the house went to a local architect who happens to be kind of a famous local architect named Wallace Frost, and asked him to work out some of those changes. So the changes on the mantle in the parlor and the changes on the doorway into between the two rooms were drawn by a famous architect, and we still have those today. The last family to live here were the Flack family, who donated the house to the city in 1969. Here are some of the photos showing the family celebrating one of their last Christmases in this house. It looks like Jim got a stuffed tiger that year. The city moved the house again to where it is today. Volunteers took care of it and gave tours until the city started the museum about 20 years ago. Now we take care of it and give tours. We know that you can't come and visit us this spring, but we're going to show you the rooms of the house and talk about what life was like in this house in the early 1800s when John West, Margaret, Harriet, Huldah, Sarah Ann, Amanda, John James, and Mary lived here. What's that, Bella? Well, yes, actually, we're pretty sure that people did have dogs all along the time that this house was occupied. We don't know a lot about those dogs, but we do know that back in the pioneer days, dogs had an important job to do. Dogs would be an important part of the family because they protected the house and the farmyard from bears, wolves that would attack the livestock, or even rabbits and deer that wanted to eat the food that the people were growing that they needed to have. And dogs sometimes would be sleeping actually outside and not in the house at all. So what do you think about that, Bella?